Welcome, everyone. I will call this meeting to order at 1:04. We begin open session with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll please join me, stand and place your right hand over your heart. And let me see, can you see my flag? There's the flag, okay. And ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And that then takes me to community comments, and I'm refreshing my page. So as everyone knows, we have a 15-minute cap per item, and we have one item on this agenda. And I believe we have about 12 comments that I will begin to read this time. Beginning with Anonymous. When we were distance learning, teachers did not necessarily have what they needed to be successful. Have webcams, document cameras, etc., already been ordered? And I expect I'm going to go ahead and read all the comments, and then they will be addressed during the presentation. And if they are not addressed during the presentation, Dr. Holman will follow up with that individual. The next comment reads, if we reopen later in the year, wouldn't we need additional staff and facilities to continue to social distance and meet those type of guidelines? A Snowline parent asks, shouldn't teachers be on site for remote learning? The optics are not good when staff is about town, golfing, etc. during school hours. Salky indicates, given that schools will be online during the fall 2020 term, what services does the school intend on providing for parents that work full-time? Other districts and states have been able to address this issue, and I am hoping that the district will think about the families that have little to no familial support and are full-time essential workers. Jeff Bilodeau asks, what training will be provided and or required to qualify our teachers for distance learning? Myra Ponce asks, regarding Serrano students, how will labs for biology work for students who are going to use the remote learning with Canvas? Jonathan Jones comment, while I am fine with distant learning for my middle school, my first grader whom attends Heritage will sit behind a screen, but for roughly 23 minutes on his best days. How are you addressing the needs of the special education program? The next comment comes from an anonymous working mother of 3. Thank you for continuing to keep us informed and being mindful of the teacher and student safety in this situation. When will you be able to provide computers to students, and will you provide internet stipends? I teach online full-time on the household's sole computer and am concerned about devices as well as our internet speed, which I do not believe can handle 3 live classes at once. Also, what kind of daily contact could we expect at this point from teachers? Another question from Myra indicates, are students going to start on August 13th or 17th? Will all schools start in the morning at the same time? Or are we keeping last year's time schedules? And Brianna Ponce asks, will the grading system for Serrano be different this year? It's difficult learning from home just like it was this past spring through distance learning. The next question comes from Rebecca K. I am wondering what the role will be for instructional associates during distance learning. How will we be able to assist our teacher and support our students? Most importantly, with special education students with their IEPs. Tanya Tatsa asks, how will students get tutoring if they are struggling with any of their schoolwork through distance learning? And I believe that is the last comment. Now we will go to item E1. Dr. Holman.
Thank you, President Behringer. Thanks to really everyone who I can see on this this virtual platform. That would be first and foremost all the board members. I really appreciate all of you coming together very quickly in short order to address school reopening based upon conversation from Governor Newsom, an announcement, really not just conversation, but really an announcement from Governor Newsom. I also thank the senior cabinet and really our entire public. Again, short order, not lost on anyone that Governor Newsom had made an announcement on Friday that impacts all schools in California. And that's really what we're here to do. This is an information/approval item to really put before you the proposal from Governor Newsom, and for us to talk about what we know now, what we will know moving forward, and what we feel like the community needs to know. Again, back in those time frames, right now, what does our learning community need to know right now, and what will they need to know moving forward in the future? President Barrett, you said it very well. I was trying to keep track, and I'll continue to look back and make sure that we try to address every single question in the context of this presentation. I think most of them will. I'll do follow-up individually as you requested and as the board always requests if I can't get to that. But I think as I was writing them down, a lot of what was asked will be shared in this presentation here, and again in this information item /approval where all of you can make that decision after this about 10 to 15 minute presentation. And so with that, again, want to thank my senior cabinet members. I want to bring attention to Robert Chacon, who's normally here. You see an icon out there, just so everyone knows. Why do we not see him? I've asked him to be part of the CDE webinar. When we scheduled this, we were in advance of the CDE webinar, and the CDE webinar got scheduled on top of this 1 o'clock time. So we'll make certain that we've got his presence in that setting so we can gather all the information in that webinar that's specific to what the governor laid out in his announcements. So doing some double duty as a team here, but that follow up with the CDE and all other governing bodies will continue. In fact, I've got a couple after this meeting here today, and we'll continue to bring that to the fore, because one of the mentions in the questions was about communication. We need to be committed to providing quality communication and being transparent at all times. I know I can always get better with that, but know that that's my commitment because I know I've heard that from all of you as a director, and we'll continue to do that. So there's kind of the groundwork, if you will, laying the stage for what we're talking about here today. Alan Miller is going to do his usual good work, and that is posting, which if you don't mind, Alan, if you can get that up here, posting the presentation. I think it's 12 slides, counting the first, the title page. We'll make this available to all of you, plus the public here. I want to speak behind the slide, right? To me, that's the more important pieces here. And this first slide, as you see right there, or actually, Alan, if you just go back to the first one, if you don't mind, I just think there's an important distinction here. We're going to be talking about school reopening, and not lost on you that Governor Newsom talked on and on again about distance learning. But you'll notice up there the word distance learning, or term distance learning, is not there. Remote school. That's the terminology that we have decided we're going to be using, and that's very strategic because we know that during that point at which I've referred to a number of times, crisis learning from March to June. I'm thankful for everyone who rolled up their sleeves and got done what they did in the most challenging of circumstances. We know now that we've learned from that setting, as well as we have different requirements. And so we're going away from the term distance learning because we know that remote school is going to look different from distance learning based upon legislation and all the efforts of our staff members. So that's why you see that on that first slide. So Alan, thank you for going backward. We'll continue to talk about that change. That was one of the questions, if not alluded to on a couple questions and public comments to start. Try to begin with our outcomes. Here's what we're looking to do. This time is get the shared understanding around what Governor Newsom talked about on Friday. Make certain that we have the shared understanding that we need to have as an entire governance team here. And then secondarily, get direction from all of you. As I mentioned, get direction in terms of our goal would be is to move forward with Governor Newsom's direction and then keep doing the work that we need to be ready for the start of the school year in August. And so, Alan, on to number 3, it's laid out. These slides are laid out in somewhat similar form, but there are some differences, and I'll bring that up as we get to them. This is a similar slide. What was said? So this is a state mandate, and that state mandate was articulated by Governor Newsom Friday afternoon, and that was that distance learning is to be the mode of learning, the instructional strategy And that's an at-home design, right? Distance learning at home for all school districts in counties on the monitoring list. All Southern California counties are on the monitoring list. San Bernardino County is one of them. So we are on there. We've been on there, if you're wondering, since June, right? And then to get off of distance learning or to get off of any at-home design and get to in-person learning, the only way that can happen, save for something I'll talk about in some slides a little bit later on, but the only way that can happen is that for 14 straight days, a county, right? I want to be really clear. A county, not a school district, but a county, San Bernardino County, the largest geographic county in the nation, has to be off the monitoring list for 14 straight days to be able to move to in-person learning. So with that background on that state mandate, and again, I should have said earlier, thanks for holding off any questions. If there's a burning one, jump in, but we'll get right to slide 12 pretty quickly here for all the questions that I would guess that you and so many people would have. On the next slide, Alan, number 4, let's drill down a little bit with the idea of data. This is really important. These next 2 slides talk about data. This one's just that reminder straight from Governor Newsom. He said safety is determined by local health data. So as we go to the 5th slide, Alan, let's drill down as a team here on our local data that I think are the most important piece of data. And they're really just 2 measures that I've got here, and I'll tell you why. That same number is up there, right? About 44,000 residents live in the 200 plus square miles of Snowline School District. And what's in the California Department of Public Health document that was updated on Friday, July 7th, are 2 data points by California Department of Public Health that San Bernardino County Department of Public Health have to follow that I think are really critical here. And that's that community incident rate per 100,000 residents. And you see up there that I only go back 3 weeks. The reason I only go back 3 weeks is because those are the only data we have, that San Bernardino County started providing this for us as districts. And those are the district boundaries, not city boundaries, but district boundaries over the last 3 weeks, right? And so on July 1st, we had an incidence rate of 256. It went up to 289 on a week from there. And then the last one that we got just in the middle of last week is 450. So I bring that up. Our numbers are increasing, but the rate at which they're increasing is jumping over that period of time. If you want some context, San Bernardino County rate right now is at 939 overall. That's the overall county incident rate. But right, if we just put in some basic math here, that means if we're kind of right in that middle, and that's about where we are. We're a little bit better in the middle. We're still on that 450 incidence rate. We're still the 13th best incident rate. I put best there, and however you look at it, meaning the lowest incident rate, 13th out of a list of 33 in the county. But we know from math, right, that if the overall rate, right, is 939, and there are plenty of districts that are higher, like a San Bernardino City district, et cetera. We've got some districts on the low end too, right? Some that are even in single digits. Those are those completely rural districts, to be quite honest, that are at that place. So there's context on the incidence rate. And I also want to bring up the positivity rate, because that's in the California Department of Public Health update as of Friday afternoon. And the positivity rate has to be considered when looking at local public health data to be able to get to an in-person design, right? For the county in particular, but certainly we've talked about monitoring these data in our own boundaries here. Right now, San Bernardino County's positivity rate's at 11.6 overall. It was 10.7 last week. Again, it shows the increase. That's not the direction we want to go to try to get off the monitoring list. Of course, you'd want to be the reverse, and that kind of number that's thrown out there at the state level to be at is 7.5. So you see that there's a ways to go right now in both of those instances, specific to our data, specific to San Bernardino County data as well. So just give you some quick context there as we know there are so many data points that are important. Those 2 have been mentioned as the most important ones as we consider getting to in-person learning. So on slide 6, and after we go over these data to put some context That title is purposeful because that's what Governor Newsom said. Rigorous distance learning is required. Distance learning being his term, we're talking about remote school. But these come right from the requirements. These are from him, okay? These should be attributed to him. And that is everyone has to have access to devices. That was a comment in public comments. Absolutely. And I want to thank the individuals involved in procuring all of those. We'll get to those in detail as need be. But we have, we were already close to 1-to-1, and we've ordered all of that to ensure that everybody's got access to devices. That daily live interaction with teachers and other students, that's a requirement now. That wasn't a requirement in March to last school year is probably the best way of saying it, from March to June. So that's a requirement now, as are challenging assignments that are the same as in-person classes. So however in-person classes would be measured. That would be measured, or at least maybe that's not the term, but how we would assess in-person classes and really determine those to be the high quality instruction that we always provide our kids with. It's got to be the same way in the remote school design. And then those lessons have to make sure that they're adapted for our kids with special needs. Now I know, Member Colomb had put forth the notion of how do you measure the degree of daily live interaction. So that's going to be coming forth with really an attendance requirement there, Member Colomb, that we have to have that to occur. As for what that daily interaction is to be, Alan, I know you've been doing some work here, and I know I'm asking you to open up your mic in some double duty, but I think this is a relevant point to stop here real quickly. Can you speak to that daily interaction? Because I know, again, some work is still need to be had, but we're doing work in that area. Alan?
Yes, certainly. If you're asking Steve to quantify it, that we're going to have to determine that. We just have to look at a number of levels, whether it be elementary, middle school, or high school, with the number of classes within a caseload. Of course, it's a lot simpler at the elementary level to work with a single class, but that juggling of the master schedule at the secondary level, we're just going to have to determine what is a sufficient amount of online or live instruction balanced with independent student work, to get the job done. Of course, we can't expect students to be sitting in front of a computer for 6 hours a day, especially when we talk about developmental levels of students and whatnot. And we have to make this engaging but yet effective, and balance that out with the accountability piece as far as graded work.
Yeah, Alan, thanks so very much. And again, that falls in line with, as these come out on Friday afternoon there, Member Colomb, probably not lost on you, right? But I will share for everybody who's connected to this meeting here today, that those guidelines come out and then the details start coming behind them. So Alan said that very well. We're doing some work already, and we're doing work, but now we'll get more details coming forth really soon here. So thanks, Alan, for sharing that. I thought that was a timely one to speak to, given that was also a public comment. Alan, on the next one, page 7, we've got remote school. And I just think this is really important. This slide is used from my last one. I chose a different picture one, but more importantly, a different language, right? That remote school, trying to really reemphasize this redesign. And you see that underlined piece, these teachers guiding it, but also being connected to the site. That's back to that requirement that if we're connected to the site, we're connected to the curriculum, or if we're connected to the curriculum and all the other wonderful school cultural elements that just make for the greatest power for kids, that those need to come through as they're guided by the teachers. And you see the other pieces that you've seen before, that accountability with attendance and grades, as it says there. I just mentioned that it's alignment. The paper packets, to be honest, they'll have to, that was on there before, it will still well remain, because we know that can be a nice supplemental component there to ensure that we're helping to support kids, even though all of them are required to have access from our standpoint, right, to be able to provide the hotspots and the devices. That's a requirement in Senate Bill 98 and AB 77, as you see the next one. But we'll ensure that, that we've got resources above and beyond what is just required, and paper packets would fall in that realm. We just talked about the daily context. That scheduling piece is important. That is not necessarily articulated as such completely in SB 98 and AB 77 from everything that I've read, but that's actually comes from our feedback that we've gotten from our parents, that we've gotten from our stakeholders out there, including students. It'd be nice to understand what is my daily schedule so I can build a routine and know that that's on our radar for sure. And then this is from that last bullet. It's from our previous slide, the slide from the previous presentation. And I just wanted to leave it in there. I think it's important, right? The flexibility to return to in-person is ready. That now as ready used to be a choice, right? Based upon on Tuesday when we shared with you the plan, the choice of the parent. Now it's dictated by us moving from off the monitoring list as a member of the county, moving off of that. And then us collectively then saying, when are we ready? And that's a question that we would want to ensure, in my opinion, that the entire system is ready to move off. Love to be able to do it literally in hours. We'd want to make sure that light switch is being done so that everyone can be successful as soon as possible would be my answer in that regard, if we're doing so as a district. And I'm looking forward to that being the case. So, Alan, when we talk about that one, we also have this at-home design. This is a beauty of Snowline that doesn't exist in every district, right? And that is two choices, two at-home designs here. When we talk about distance learning, both of these would fall into this, but there are two different choices for different reasons. And we talked about this at the last meeting. I'll just say that long-standing successful program does remain to be true for all the grade levels listed, but that opportunity to structure a curriculum and an outcome for kids in a homeschool setting is really a testament to Snowline Academy for many, many years. And that parent/guardian is the learning coach, as it says there, is the one who leads the learning, but also supported by our qualified teachers who do great work over there to support curriculum and grading and ensuring that good work is done. There's an enrollment commitment there, right? Because to get that done well, we need to have those kids who commit to that, to stick and stay there for a length of time, to ensure that success. And that semester-based design is really good for Snowline Academy to be successful there. So there are the two at-home designs that still remain out of our three choices. The one that doesn't is the in-person, of course. And so, Alan, as we go over to the slide 9 here and start to really drill down on next steps, Governor Newsom did not mention this on Friday, but in the language that was approved by him and his office, and it's in the California Department of Public Health language that's updated, is an in-person learning waiver. It's an elementary school waiver. It's only for kids that would be at the elementary school level. It's the only exception that exists, as you see there. And how does that get granted? Our local health officials, who's the San Bernardino County Department of Public Health Director Corwin Porter, who I meet with on a semi-regular basis, I should say. It would be him and his colleagues who would grant those in conjunction with the California Department of Public Health. Those are the various factors that are involved here. And that would be based on our local COVID-19 data and how are we doing in Snowline, as well as stakeholders. It says in the language, our stakeholders have to be involved. Now, again, in an effort to be fully transparent, that's why that's in here. This exists. Never want to hide anything. There it is. It's out there. I will also say this, that this is a challenge. Every indication right now is this is a challenging waiver to get approved, and particularly for the reasons that I think we've already talked about. Our local COVID-19 data are going up. And that's a significant challenge right now. We have to certainly consider that when this decision's in the hands of the California Department of Public Health and the local health officials. I'm going to be working, as I always do, with them to get the feedback to see where we are and how we're doing. But for a multitude of reasons that we can talk at length, and I'll be at the ready, President Behringer and everyone else to field those questions. But the capacity to do this just at one grade level presents a lot of challenges, to say the least. And so, again, wanted to make sure that we put that waiver out there, all the while knowing that there are numerous challenges to overcome to make that happen, and make me concerned to even move that cause forward because of, again, just so many so many situations that we would have to mitigate to ensure that occurred. It just seems to be very, very troublesome at this stage. But again, we will always pursue all the information that is necessary with this situation. So, Alan, with the final couple slides here before we start to have this conversation, I want to talk about what's next. This slide might look familiar, but there are some differences. I think this was one of the questions. We would still recommend right now that August 17th be the first day of school. At your last meeting, which was not that long ago, believe it or not, it seems like a long time ago to me, but it was only Tuesday. You gave us the approval to start on August 17th so that we could move forward with training. And that's the fourth bullet down there. We recognize that significant training needs to occur. I want to commend my senior cabinet people, particularly Dennis Zimmerman and Alan Miller, who have been really heading up this concept of making sure the readiness from the staff. And so we can talk about that as is appropriate. But certainly we're going to have to finalize the remote school design based on the input we get from all of you, but also the guidance that comes forth from CDE between now and then. And also, we don't want to lose sight of finalizing in person. And I say that so that we're at the ready. It doesn't mean, of course, that we're not starting with that. They don't have the capacity to start with that. And that's not even considering the waiver, right? But we don't want to lose sight of that because we know there are kind of parallel tracks running. And we want to make sure that we continue to do double duty, if you will, getting ready for remote school first and foremost, but also moving the in-person cause along so that we are ready when our data get better, when San Bernardino County gets off the monitoring list and we can get on to these opportunities after 14 plus days for in-person learning, hopefully sooner than later. We don't know when that'll occur, of course, but hopefully sooner than later. I've said numerous times that third to last bullet, the capacity for us to reinvent ourselves is so needed. I'm just impressed. Day after day, I get to work with so many wonderful people who have that mindset of being flexible. Again, and it starts with the board members. Who would have thought on Thursday night we get a plan approved, and then on Friday early afternoon that plan is changed? It's an example of this flexible mindset. Example two, credit to all of you being willing to come here today so that we could get this information out to our stakeholders as soon as possible. It's what we owe them, so that they don't have to try to interpret what the governor's saying, so that they can have our interpretation of it. And then we can start to move them forward so they can be successful. And the last two are capitalized because I think they are incredibly critical. And I don't want anyone to lose sight that we're not monitoring our own data on all fronts, but particularly on COVID-19, but also monitoring what the state's telling us. That's a given. But I think this was an example. We knew that something might be coming around, just before that Friday meeting. We knew something was coming, and that's because we're monitoring that as best we can. And so doing that is just going to be critical as we move forward. A lot of details, and I'm sure I might get some questions on in a moment, and us as a team will be willing to ask those. But that's the overall big picture as we ask you, and Alan, as you go to number 11, and this notion of working together. There's a few levels of together. I always talk about Margaret Mead, and I just think, in her quote, and I would just paraphrase her quote by saying this, right, that we can't ever underestimate the power of a small group that is Snowline in this case, because that is, when we get thoughtful, committed individuals in that small group, which is Snowline, we're trying to be that way. We can solve the world's problems, and at least in this case, we can solve Snowline's problems. So working together on this is just going to be so very critical. But when we specifically think about this group right here, we just really appreciate you coming today to consider the notion of giving us direction to, again, follow the governor's order here to move forward this way as rapidly as possible, and for us to align our efforts so that we can serve this wonderful place that I get to work in, and that's called Snowline Joint Unified School District. So that's really what I put before all of you, is that background. Really expect that there'll be questions. Be more than happy to answer them, all the while knowing that Dennis and Alan and Nancy will be here to help too. And President Behringer, thank you for allowing me to go through that presentation that we'll make available, as we always do, to our stakeholders in the event that that's of interest to them. Thanks, President Behringer. at the
Thank
ready.
you very much for that presentation, Dr. Holman. It would seem fundamental to our remote school program that's being presented that we have effective, sufficient amounts of teacher training. How much is it anticipated that is required?
Yeah, thanks there for that question. I love the training question because you're right. It's fundamental. It's necessary, and allow Dennis and Alan to fill in after I say this. We see that first week from a teacher standpoint. I'll start there from August 10th until August 14th. That's the Monday to Friday, leading up to a Monday, August 17th start time is being sufficient on a few fronts. And that would be with support from vendor-based learning. And we've got some exciting things that we're trying to work on to support in that regard, as well as I'll call it site-based, even though we won't be on site, right? There are site-specific issues that have to be trained around remote learning, and not to mention, in due time, getting ready for in-person. So looking forward to that. Dennis and Alan, I'll turn it back over to both of you. Dennis, do you want to start on that? Just given that, sometimes the awkwardness of the virtual setting. You mind starting there, Z? And then we'll go to Alan, too.
Yeah, those additional 2 days are helpful. Us now knowing the design that we're looking to do is helpful for us to start to work together with our staff to prepare preparation and training during those 5 days, that week of August 10 through 14. We're together with STA Wednesday and Thursday, and we're with CSEA on Monday next week, so we'll be able to get input there in what is needed as well, because again, there's a lot that's going to be needed, and I don't see there's any way that everything is all done training-wise come Monday the 17th. We still have early out collaboration Thursdays in our calendar. That's going to give folks a chance to continue to monitor and adjust, learn and grow, and continue to make those adjustments. And like I said, and we're working out all the different pieces of remote versus small groups, possibly in person that can socially distance. We don't know yet. We've got to see where that all is, because there are many different designs out there between a school setting, but also it's an employment setting. So we've got to blend all those together in the most wise and beneficial way possible.
Yeah, thanks. And so now, what would you add to that there?
Yeah, just going over strictly to the training side of the house, what's might be some offerings for our folks. We've got two opportunities that I'm looking at. One is ironclad and already scheduled, and that's the session 2 of Kagan Cooperative Learning. They're going to be doing it on a remote in a remote platform, and they are specifically going to tailor their training not only to engagement that can be used in a classroom setting, but also a virtual setting. And that's going to be more important than ever, is to be able to truly engage our students and to keep them engaged in this virtual platform, or this remote school platform that we're going to be offering. On the subsequent day, the following day, trying to get some things in the works to give them some more tools through a company called EdTech. It's the EdTech team, and they are offering a virtual training that just we lucked out. They're happening to be offering that on August 12th, which is a partial day, not a full day, but kind of a a la carte approach to offering training, knowing that the technology skills are diverse among districts, ours included, and among teachers, in the way that they have the capacity to teach online. So what they'll get is they'll be able to participate into 3 breakout sessions of their choosing, meeting them where they are and what they need, so that we're not going into it one-dimensionally and assuming that we know what everybody needs, because people do need differentiated instruction in the way of online learning. So That is really new, and I've got an inquiry out to the company to see if we could jump on board. It's not closed or anything like that, but the company's got a good reputation. They come of high recommendation from Deb Peace, who's our TOSA of instructional technology. And so what she has to say, I listen to very closely, and I think it might just be a nice day in which to build some more capacity for teachers. We don't want to overload the whole week full of training, because we know that planning and collaboration are going to be just as critical, just to set us up for success for launching that remote school model on Monday the 17th.
A couple of questions, if I may. We already moved the start date back from, I believe it was the 14th to the 17th, or 13th to 17th. First question was, does more time buy us more options or opportunities? The other part to that was, you got feedback from the learning platforms that the week would be sufficient time for training sessions to happen. Have we got a broad response from staff? Is that enough time on their point of view, that this is enough time to learn on their end and begin to implement?
Yeah, great question there, Member Hernandez. So I would say this kind of, I feel like I heard two questions. So first and foremost, is it enough time? I think it's that cost benefit analysis. I think we, of course, presenting it, we feel like it's best. We've had some input in terms of the broad spectrum. I think Dennis Zurin has the best take on that. And we can hear from him in that regard, and that's an ongoing piece too in his work. But I'd also say this, that one of the reasons why we put that out there is getting the kids connected. We push it back. There's certainly a benefit there to pushing it back for more training, but how much training is needed to get going, we felt like the week would be sufficient. But also the importance of getting those kids reconnected. Again, granted, it's not in person. It is going to be on that remote school design, but boy, that's something that we weigh out here on this piece too. So that's I think where we're feeling right now at this stage. Dennis, do you want to talk about anything that I maybe had missed in terms of when Member Hernandez talks about the number of folks who would know about that? Because I know, again, being in negotiations, we obviously don't negotiate outside of that, outside of the table there. But anything that you would want to share that might be context to that?
No, we're still listening. We're still gathering information. We're going to work together with different groups. I think even if we had 2 weeks of training, we're still going to need training throughout the year. That's why I brought up those early out collaboration Thursdays, because there's going to continue to be a learning curve as you try to implement things. You're going to need to come back together, to bounce ideas off of one another and to continue honing this craft. And so, more time is always best, but we also only have X amount of time in work calendars. We have to provide 180 student days. Saturday academies do not count as student days. And so we have some constraints, and we're going to work with those to the best of our ability to provide staff what they tell us they need, as well as doing what students need and trying to work with parents as well. This is tough for parents. We heard, I think, one of the questions in the public comments, what additional services are we going to provide to families who have parents who work full time? So there's many different fronts to this that we're running to catch up to. I don't think we're ever going to catch up with it, but we are running to catch up towards it, to it.
This is Dave Nielsen. I really appreciate what you had to say, Mr. Zimmerman. I think it's critical because going to an online program from being an in-person is a totally different teaching style. It's totally different. And so my concern is exactly what you said. And if they can do that on the early out days, that's great. But they need to be getting together in their teaching teams their grade level teams, and they need to be sharing. And I don't think you can do it before school starts because they're really not going to know exactly what's going to happen until they start doing it. And as we go online and doing this over time, then their needs are going to start being generated. And I think the district needs to take the time to make sure we're meeting those needs, because this is going to be critical. I really, truly believe our teachers are the best, and they're going to do the best possible job possible in this situation. I also believe our administrators are the best, and they need to make sure that we do the very job possible. So the question I have is, when we were off this spring, I've heard comments in the news that people didn't go online, they didn't partake of the instruction was offered. Did we do any? Did we monitor any of that in this 3 months we were off this spring, of how many kids actually went online to get assignments and those kind of things?
Yeah, Member Nielsen, thanks for saying that. And I'm sorry, I don't have those data in front of me. I can get it to all of you because we did two things in terms of monitoring that. One was, we got, for instance, I was in a meeting up at Toronto High School last week, and they had the data on that there. And I'm sorry, I don't have it again at my fingertips, but we'll make it available. Secondarily, though, is the pulse survey. Couldn't think of that term. That pulse survey that was taken during the distance learning. Now, that was a survey of students and of parents and of staff members. And so that's a mixed stakeholder group, but we have data on that too. And what I can tell you is, again, not having it at my fingertips, we'll get it in front of you again. I think you've had that before as a team. It wasn't anywhere near 100%. We all know that. And so, again, not lost on all of you that I just want to take another opportunity to reinforce remote school, different design, different requirements to ensure that we get a whole different level of, result moving forward. And I think you said it well. Love our teachers, love our staff, love our administrators. Wouldn't trade any of, that whole collective for any other collective in the world. And so I agree with you in that regard. And we'll get those data to you. I say that, though. Alan, you and I were in that same meeting most recently. Do you have those numbers off the top of your head that you'd want to share, or anything you'd want to share in the data, knowing that I'll provide it to all the board members again? Yeah, just on mute there, Alan.
It's not just me.
No, I can pull it up, Ryan. I don't know if you want me to open it up and try to pull some data out of it or display it on the screen real quick. What would you like?
You're on mute now, Ryan.
Yeah, I tell you, it shows you how much I admire Alan. I really try to emulate him in all things that he does. That's why I kept it on mute there for a moment. But to President Behrens, I really turn over to you. I mean, I know we've sent it to you before, but we can put it out there again if you'd like. It's up to you, President Behrens and your colleagues.
What is the consensus of the board? Do we want to view that and have a shared screen at this time?
I don't know if I need to see it. This is my point, is if we're going to be online, which we are, it's mandated by the governor of California, the students have to access the information. And so we need to figure out a way to make sure that actually learning is taking place within the households. And so that's my bigger question, is how are we going to benefit students in accomplishing the goal of their educational needs? That's the question I have.
Yeah, thanks, Member Nielsen. And Alan, I'll have, I know you've had a lot of conversations about this so far, but there's still a lot to be done, right? And so you want to talk about just how, to Member Nielsen, what he's asked, and how we make that shift, that transformation in the direction that he had discussed.
Oh, certainly. It really goes from a whole harmless paradigm that we had in the spring, really because it was the right thing to do. It was a whole different way of trying to deliver instruction and student support. And we felt that was the best way. The downside of that was when you do a hold harmless type of approach, you're allowing students to have no lower than their third quarter grade in that fourth quarter. It really did desensitize some of the the motivation or the willingness to really see their classes through the long haul. So that's it's difficult to say. Once again, I stick by it. It was the right thing to do. But going into the fall, it's compulsory education. It's required. We're going to be taking attendance like we normally would in the physical building. We're going to be requiring assignments like we normally would. We're going to be grading assignments like we normally would. So there's going to be a lot higher level of accountability, which does incentivize learning.
That I appreciate your comments, Mr. Miller. The other thing that I had concern about, it was mentioned briefly in the community comments towards the board, is I feel very strongly that our teachers need to be available to parents and students during their contracted time, like at the high school, if that's from 7 to 3. Parents and students need to be able to get a hold of their teacher either by phone or on the computer or however they're going to do it. And that's almost a mandatory type of thing, because if the parents are going to be the coaches at home, they need to be able to get a hold of those teachers probably as much as what the students will need to be able to get a hold of them. So I think it's imperative wherever they do this distance learning from is that they're on the time card from their contracted time to meet the needs of the kids and their parents as we go through this.
Yeah, remember, Nelson, thanks for bringing that up. And I just want to bring attention to our staff members and just in responses to surveys in terms of readiness to reconnect, readiness to be with our students. And then from Tuesday, when we made the announcement all the way until today, how many staff members I've heard from just anecdotally to say, I'm so ready to be back, to be with students, to help them, to connect with them, to do what they do best. And that is, and I say staff here, right? Not just teachers, but staff. How do we lift up these kids and ensure endless possibilities? And so I think that says something a lot when we've got large numbers of people in a staff survey, large numbers of people reaching out to us like never before. All of us senior cabinet members saying, we're ready to connect with kids. We're ready to be there for them. So while we've got work to be done across the entire system, and like I said, I love that we're with Snowline here because we've got a great starting point. That is the staff members across our system.
Thank you, Dr. Holman. I'm just going to end I think it's critically important that we give the time to our classroom educators to be able to meet in their class groups or their grade level groups, department groups, whatever the case may be, that they be given enough time to where they can be able to do what they need to do. I think those teachers need to be available to the parents and the kids from their contracted time to help them navigate any way that we possibly can. And I know that our administrative team, site administrators and district administrators, going to do everything in their power. And then the third thing is I think we need to reach out, especially to special needs students of lower economic income groups that may need a little extra help, and make sure that their needs and they're aware of all that's available to them through the Snowline School District. That's the only comments I have to say. Thank you.
Member Colon, you have comments?
Yes, I'm going to start with, looks like I'm going to be in the role of a parent because a lot of my grandkids' parents work, so I'll be probably all day trying to manage that. So I'm trying to think in terms of a parent, I don't even know where to start as a parent when they come over to my house. So I was thinking maybe a suggestion, you're talking about training for teachers. I'm thinking each principal should have some training for the parents, like have some sort of an online thing. Okay, this is, maybe develop a rubric or a script or a schedule. You're going to do, reading at this time or PE at this time or, something like this. Some kind of training for the parents to negotiate their kids' education. I kind of worry about the younger the kids are, the more help they need. And the more help the parents are going to need. I mean, we have kids that are going to be learning to read for the first time. I don't know how you do that by just having a kid log into a Chromebook. I mean, I'd like to logistically know what that looks like. I don't know if you guys know what it looks like either. And then I start thinking about, what can the parent do to facilitate, their students learning how to read. I worry about latchkey kids. There's going to be second and third graders and whatever sitting home all day long by themselves while their parents work. As much as you hate to think that would be wrong, it's going to happen. Are we going to have people available to home visitations to make sure learning is facilitated for them? I don't know if you thought about that or not. And then lastly, what are some roles and what do they look like? For instance, what do the members of the police staff do during a workday? What do the custodians do? There's nobody in school. What does the school nurse do? Do they get new roles? What do the secretaries do? What does a day look like for a principal? Are they going to be logging into various student accounts or teacher accounts, or I don't know. I just have no clue as to what that looks like, what a day looks like for a principal, if you know what that is. And then lastly, let's say a teacher is sick for a day. Are they going to need a sub to facilitate their classes online? And if they do, are they going to get trained?
I remember, Cologne, so many great questions. Try to maybe capture a few. I'll go back to that flexibility statement that I mentioned. Boy, the capacity for us to reimagine our work is critical. And so when you mention everything from, our counselors to our custodians or our police force, I mean, you're right. It is going to look different. But on the flip side of that is we've got some opportunities here. How do we reinvent education in this context? The roles are going to have to shift. And so I guess I would say in some cases, it's going to be the same but different. And when I say that, I'll go back to maybe the very first thing you said, parent training. Parent training used to occur. It sounds like it's gone, right? I don't want to make it sound like that with in-person learning, but I just kind of dating myself. We used to have regular parent trainings monthly, right? How can we help our parents help educate their kids at home? Well, that still continues, right? And I think your idea is a great one, and it's not lost on us. We've already, had that thought in mind. How do we help our parents help their kids at home? Going to be critical. So thank you for bringing that piece up. And again, when you get to the redesign of staff, I'll let Dennis talk about that in just a moment. But again, this is the same but different. We're educating kids, but we're doing it differently. And so the capacity for us to be inventive within all the rules and guidelines and policies, it's not going to be easy, but it's exciting, right? We got this capacity to reshape ourselves so that we can support our kids in the best of ways. You mentioned a daily schedule. Amen. We've heard that time and again, and that's going to be one of the tips of our spear that is a remote school, because we know that routine presents opportunities for kids to be successful in this setting. And so we'll absolutely do that. Dennis, I talked a lot there, though, but what would you add relative to the staffing piece? Because remember, Cologne talked a lot about the staffing pieces that I know you've been heading that piece up quite well that you can share with the team here.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Remember, Cologne, in your list, and you said et cetera, I know you meant many other positions. There's lots of positions in the district, but the majority of the positions that you listed are classified positions. They're the non-certificated, non-classroom teacher type of positions. And I got to tell you, since March 13th, when this announcement came down, our classified group of employees and their leadership have been incredible in working with us through this pandemic emergency time frame to say, what do we need to get done? We'll get it done. We'll work with you to get it done. And they said the same thing when we met together about a week and a half ago, and we'll be back together with them at the table coming up soon. So they want to be involved in meaningful work. And so we're going to continue to work together and how to do that. I'll tell you, we don't know exactly yet where and what each one's going to do. And even when we do, it may change the next day or the day after, or we may find out we need more in some areas and less than others. So we're going to have to be nimble and flexible. But again, that's why we already do have dates on the calendar to meet with each of those labor groups to work together to brainstorm these pieces.
I would just like to say that the special education students on IEPs have very specific learning requirements that I believe we need to make sure that we address those needs.
Yeah, thanks, President Behringer. I just reach over here if you see me moving around here, but credit to our director, Lori Delgado, who's put together a wonderful draft of just what you're talking about. How do we serve kids no matter what the design is? And that design is, the old traditional model, if you will, what we've come to know and absolutely appreciate, but these new designs. And so, absolutely, you're right. We have to serve the kids, and it's going to look different potentially, but we've got to do it through the IEP process. And I give credit to, again, Lori Delgado and her entire team and all the special educators. That's going to look a little different too, but it has to be done, and we're going to find the ways to do that for sure.
I'd be interested
go ahead.
to know what other districts are doing in that respect as well.
Yeah, and I can't speak for every single one, but I know, I have the good fortune of having conversations on a regular basis with my counterparts in the high desert, if not the county, at least every other week, if not every week. And going through the same process here. We're figuring this piece out, right, specific to how it happens. Alan Miller and I have been part of a collaborative, as have Robert and James have sat in for us too, Robert Chacon and James Fields. But that collaborative there's another meeting of the high desert folks where we learn from one another, and it's that opportunity for us to get those answers. So there's a lot here for sure. Just so appreciative of the direction, the support we get from all of you, but just our staff members. This isn't easy, but we're going to figure it out because it's the right thing to do for our kids.
Absolutely. Thank you. Member Hernandez, you had comments?
I did. Thank you. I'm not sure if I'm clear, if it's not been addressed, but what is, obviously our students are going to be distance learning or remote school, attending remote school. What is the model or the plan for the teachers? Is it in class? Is it at home? Is it an option? Is it a choice? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, what I can say is, again, speaking on behalf of Dennis Zimmerman, there is a lot to be done at the negotiations table. Dennis, you want to talk about that right off the bat, because that's that's right there. And of course, we want to be very clear and transparent, but we also know that a lot of the work that has to be done when we talk working conditions is done at the negotiations table. Dennis?
Yeah, thanks. Now, it's key in our discussion that is on the table for the time together on Wednesday and Thursday this week, because different people see it differently in different realms, even within, say, the administration realm and or the teacher realm. So we're going to come together. We're going to work through this, work this out, because we don't know yet, Marcus. I wish I could tell you specifically, but it's not something.
That's okay. Yeah. No, I mean,
so we got a team on it.
I get it. We planned something last week. Now we're planning something else this week. So I get it. I just didn't know if off the top of your head said, yes, this is what we're doing. It's going to be A, B, and C, or, it's only A, and that's fine. So thank you, everybody, on that one. We did have a lot of comments come in from high school students regarding the announcement last week. I was put out there a little bit inaccurately. Are you able to speak to the high school platform at this time for the comfort and the knowledge of all those watching right now?
Yeah, so we were able to, with your great help, we were able to get Canvas approved, right? And then to get that not only approved by all of you, but the Toronto High School task force that is Canvas, and that's a learning platform, right? That's very common in the college level, is becoming common at high school because of its value to be able to provide, again, learning at a high level in a distance format. And so now that we've got that piece cleared by the vendor and cleared by all of you and cleared by the task force, we're moving forward with that. Alan Miller and I sat in on a meeting recently with that task force, and I give them a lot of credit. They're putting forth a ton of time to make sure that that's ready for kids. Alan, again, Canvas better than I do, but what would you add to Member Hernandez's good question about Canvas, so that all the parents know that, and not to mention students, that there's going to be a really exciting platform here to support their learning?
Absolutely. I know the high school is really excited about using this. It'll be a great vehicle for the online learning platform, as well as it would have served them well in the classroom as well. And I apologize if I misspoke this past week, talking about kind of restricting it to the two options being Snowline Academy or in-person learning. And I was a little reserved in my comments, just not knowing how that was going to play out regarding being able to offer that remote school option to our kids, just because of the very tight credentialing issues and things like that. You know, in my mind, I was trying to play it out whether they would have enough teachers with specific credentials to be able to offer them that remote school platform. Now, with Canvas, that does allow you to do that. You can teach kids both in person as well as have kids learning remotely. But once again, that kind of goes back to Dennis's world or our world regarding negotiating working conditions and whatnot. So I didn't want to go on record at that time saying that's how we'll do it, because in all due respect and to our bargaining unit, STA, I don't want to take anything for granted or say something that we're going to have to take a few steps back on later.
Yeah, I get it. It's very, very challenging to walk every aspect of providing enough information, not enough, and perhaps it was just a little bit not enough for several people last week, and that's also understandable. So thanks. I guess my next questions are about moving forward. We were very clear that we wanted an in-person instruction to start. Clearly, with the direction that we've been given, we are not doing that. Other than the incident rate in the county dropping, or the percentage, dropping below the 7.5% that you mentioned, are there any other metrics that the county is looking towards, or is that the only thing that we need to meet?
Yeah, thanks, Member Hernandez. Here's what I would say to you. I don't know that complete answer yet. I will get that sooner, but what I do know, I will say for sure, and that is those two metrics. That's positivity rate in San Bernardino County. We don't have a positivity rate at this point identified by district boundaries. I'll find out from Director Corin Porter if he's able to get that delineated at that level, really disaggregate the data at that level. And then the incidence rate itself, right? The community incidence rate itself. So those two measures right now are the two mentioned in the California Department of Public Health document that's available. It's a public document. It's available, and it was written on Friday. So I know those to be available. And then it says in any other data. And so I might have that answer at 4:00. I'm hoping so, that Corwin Porter, the director, he's been nothing but very supportive of us. I hoping that he'll share that. Once I do have it, I'll certainly communicate it.
Oh, that'd be great. Thinking of a reopening plan and maybe some of the comments that we did receive, would it be beneficial to set contingent targets throughout the year? I mean, we could say fall break is contingent 1, quarters are contingent 2, or January is contingent 3, something to that effect. Does that buy us any planning, any long-term scheduling, so that we can say if we hit all the positive marks and if we're able to move forward, this is the plan and this is when we'll implement that?
Yeah, this is another great question from all of you, and I will tell you, this is one that to me, it's I'd love to consider. What's the sweet spot for the entire learning community, right? And I think Dennis Zimmerman would head this up in a large part here because of his great work on the human resources side and with our bargaining units, and so they're going to be a huge component of this. Our stakeholders that are our parents, and not to mention our and families, I should say, not to mention our students, but finding that sweet spot, as you mentioned. And I can also add to this, it's not lost to me that other districts are considering much the same thing, right? I've heard them say everything from, we've got our firm points and we're not going to budge from them. I would just say this, at this stage, I think we're much more flexible right now in that regard. But Dennis, with my rambling aside, what would you add to this? Is again, all these are just great questions for us to, give answers to as best we can, and also the next steps that we're moving toward.
I guess my thoughts on that are, if the Swami can predict what the COVID numbers are going to be on those cut points, we're all in. But otherwise, we are really just going to have to be nimble. I don't see a scenario where all of a sudden the lights go on from one day to the next. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna probably have to be a gradual rollout, but we're just gonna have to be ready and move forward as public health tells us we're able to.
Yeah, and if I can just add real quickly, I should have said there, sorry, Member Hernandez and Dennis, that also I think what we want to take advantage of is just as Dennis had alluded to, is the idea of not finding the balance between preparing our stakeholders, right? So, we prepare them so they can plan, but also not lose time in the in-person environment that we all know, love, and want to get back to across the system. It's not lost on anyone, and Governor Newsom even said it too. He wants to be there. I mean, I agree that everyone wants to be there. So it's finding that sweet spot, and I didn't articulate that part. Sorry, Member Hernandez.
Oh, no, that's fine. I mean, again, super dynamic. I mean, we're not looking at a 1 week turnaround on things. We're probably looking at a few months, and I think we all understand that at this point. But speaking to the governor's plans, I was really pleased to hear him say that routine testing will be a part of that in-person platform. And I'm sure we're far too early to even think about what that looks like. But I know we attempted to reach out to all our staff to make sure that everybody's accommodated for in terms of any high-risk conditions. Will we continue that effort to make sure that everybody understands their responsibilities, I guess, with whenever that transition does occur into in-person?
Absolutely, we will. I'll let Dennis add to that, but I want to just go backward too to go forward. And remember, Hernandez, I appreciate bringing up that testing piece. Right now, that's a challenge in San Bernardino County, period, just having enough testing. That's been documented very well. And I know Corbin Porter and his team, they're working to get to that level. That's part of the waiver too. I didn't mention that, but that cohort testing, right, of teachers, that's also tied into that piece. And then when we don't have enough testing throughout the county, that makes, again, that waiver, again, challenging to even pursue for that reason. So thanks for bringing up that testing, because I realize now that I didn't say that during the waiver piece. Dennis, I answered yes to that, but anything else you would add to Member Hernandez's second question there, kind of, or maybe it's the only question, but I went backward to address the testing.
No, the testing, actually, I keep popping in a little bit on the CDE webinar. It's being talked about there, and they're trying to clarify that piece as well. And one of the things I just saw on that is a little bit surprising. And so, again, stay tuned, because, clarification is coming, and sometimes clarification just breeds more fogginess, but we're working on it. We've got to see how we do that. We also need to understand that we are a public employer. There are things that we can ask but can't mandate. There are things we can mandate, and it's unique. And we're going to work through that, and we're going to work together.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, and part of that, we were questioning that last week, and when we heard that Major League Baseball is going to be testing its players every 2 days, and it's like, we've already said, the whole country knows the actors, the athletes, all these people turned out weren't essential. Our teaching staff, the community that keeps us open, that keeps us moving forward, they're the essential ones. Let's make sure we test them as regularly as we can. I know we have a lot of obstacles with that, and that's why I said I was really happy that the governor included the required testing. So thank you.
Member Funk, did you have any questions or comments?
Oh, yeah, I have a plea and a question. My plea, and maybe it's form of a question, is looking out for the whole student. Kind of piggybacking on Member Cologne's, are we training and providing tools for our teachers who are going to be the only set of eyes on these students to see the well-being of these students? They're the only people outside their family who are going to see these students potentially, and what tools are in place and training are in place for teachers to be able to take care of their beloved students. So I don't really need an answer today. If you could just please help us out with that. My question is this: are we going to continue to feed students? Will they get a breakfast and a lunch? Or are they just going to get a lunch? Can you address a meal plan a little bit for me?
Yes, thanks. I know you told me you didn't need an answer. I just want to say your first one. Thank you for bringing that up. It's so important, right? Member Funk, you've always been as well as the entire board, been advocates for kids. And again, I would say same, but different in some cases. We've got a wonderful staff with our attendance department, right? And they'll be, we'll have to talk about how can they do things differently to check up. How about our counselors, a telehealth type approach? Amen. We've got to be engaged in that. So thank you for bringing forth that piece. And then to your second piece with meals, the quick answer is yes. Everything's going to be available as has been in the past. This is what I have to appreciate about our leader, Director Tony Chafee. We were in a meeting this morning and she was just reminded of this change. And she said, you know what? I don't have that answer yet, but I will have that answer. We will have that answer and those kids will be fed. So again, that's a stay tuned one, like so many. I think Dennis said, stay tuned to stay tuned, stand by to stand by. All those pieces, I think, relevant here, but know that it'll be done. And I think it's not lost on you. We almost had 250,000 meals served in very short order, and it'll happen again. And sorry, we don't have that answer, but it's forthcoming for sure.
Thank you. And then a follow up, if you don't mind. With the stay at home order, it's a question of our facilities. I mean, there's not a great deal of parks in these communities. There's not a lot of open space. What are the facility access, walking tracks, our fields? Are our properties closed down? Or can families access the very limited green space we have here?
Gosh, again, here's the notion of complete wellness, right? So we talked about maybe some mental health. Now we're talking about wellness. And I will tell you, that's something we'll have to go back to the table and have some more conversations. I will also tell you that track, there's access to it right now, and people are getting on that right now. And that's a powerful conversation that I think we can speak to at this table when we're at the ready to be able to talk about, again, supporting this community. Not lost on all of you that you're board members for the Snowline Board of Education, but to be quite honest, you really have other duties as assigned, and that is they just kind of come along with it. And this is an example of it. So thank you for thinking about that, and we'll certainly work forward on that to make sure that we can support our community. Again, I love the sentiment on this, and excited to come back to all of you with an explicit plan on that.
Thank you, President Behringer.
Thank you very much. Excellent questions by everybody. I just wanted to, in reviewing the questions that were submitted, there's a number of specifics that we've been unable to provide at this point, referencing tutoring, computer hardware, IEPs, and labs on the high school campus, teacher training, and I believe teacher training is, a very high priority, and I see that things are in the works. I'm concerned that we want to carefully survey all of those and make sure that our teachers are feeling supported. We do have the best teachers on this planet, and I know that they're going to do a fantastic job, but we all need tools and resources to be successful, to help our students be successful. And also, it's imperative that in this hard time, that our principals are site leaders for those teachers as well, that they have access to their site leaders, and there's responsiveness there as well. So I in the conversation that we've shared, I'm hearing that while there's not a lot of detailed information because this wasn't Plan A, that future communication will be provided to respond effectively to the questions that we've received. But at this time, I believe that we're being asked to provide direction for moving forward for the district. And so I would like to entertain a motion at this time so that we can begin to move forward.
I would motion that we direct the superintendent to take on all necessary tasks to get remote learning started by August 17th.
And is there a second?
I can second that.
Okay, very good. And we'll do a roll call vote beginning with Member Hernandez.
And President Bridger, I'm sorry to interrupt here, but I think this is implied in this, and I just want to make sure in that remote, we talk about distance learning, remote school as we call it, and that would be under the guidelines set forth by Governor Newsom. I'm assuming that's probably assumed, right? I just
Right.
sure that that's the case.
Governor Newsom's recommendation, yes.
And thanks.
And before the roll call, is there any other comment or discussion?
When do you start?
Okay, so that's ancillary conversation there. So we'll go on with a roll call vote of Member Hernandez,
Aye.
Member Nelson,
Aye.
Member Colomb.
I'll say aye, but I just want a clarification. Is it a recommendation or a mandate?
Well, I believe he's providing us with the mandate, and this is our recommendation
Okay.
to follow the mandate. And Member Funk?
Aye.
And I, Christina Berger, vote aye. So that then takes care of the single agendized item. And so I will then entertain a motion for adjournment.
I will motion to adjourn the meeting, the special meeting.
I'll second Mr. Hernandez.
Very good. And a roll call vote beginning with Member Hernandez,
Aye.
Member Nelson,
Aye.
Member Colomb,
Aye.
Member Funk,
Aye.
and Christina Berger votes aye. We are now adjourned at 2:19, and I know everybody's got a lot of work to do, so we will allow you to go take care of business. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate your support. Thank you all.
We are adjourned. Bye.
Aye.